As I'm pulling back into Beirut, this is what I see. Just as I'm driving into Beirut that afternoon at 2:50 p.m. And of course, I'm looking at that, the driver is looking at this, and the other passengers in the car start to panic, the cell phones start going off. I don't speak Arabic, but all I could hear was plasticine, plasticine. And I thought, oh my gosh, plasticine happens to be a very vibrant square in the middle of eastern Beirut. It's a Christian area. It's extremely commercial, it's wealthy, it's a very peaceful place. Not one where you would assume that anything bad would happen. It's also a place I happen to go every Monday morning and every Saturday morning for a choir rehearsal with a choir that I sing in. So I cross this place on a regular basis. And so we realized immediately there was something very bad, and somehow by the time I got home, we turned on the radio, and with my limited Arabic and my driver's limited English, he managed to convey to me that a car bomb had gone off at Place Sissine. And indeed, this is what the scene that you can see giving rise to all of that terrible smoke. And so by the time I arrived home, I turned on the TV, and by this point, within an hour, it becomes obvious why that car bomb went off. This was the assassination of one of Lebanon's highest security chiefs, General Wissam al-Hassan, who's a very prominent Sunni leader. And that's his picture. That's actually the spot where he was assassinated. So that was my October 19th, which left me with all sorts of different impressions. But I thought I would begin with that because this event was actually the impetus for a lot of the media conversation about how Lebanon is about to descend into civil war, because all of a sudden we have car bombs going off in Christian East Beirut, and so the specter of sectarian violence comes up immediately, right? And as I said, CNN and BBC and pretty much every other news outlet that you could watch framed it in these terms. And the fears that the car bombing would lead to a civil war were compounded over the weekend immediately following the assassination of al-Hassan. On the 20th of October, which was Saturday, angry Sunni protesters, because remember, this is a very important detail, al-Hassan was a Sunni leader. So Sunnis are all over the country blocking roads with burning tires. It's their sort of favorite protest method of the Lebanese, whether they happen to be Sunnis, Shiites, Christians, whoever, they love to burn tires. This is the tires burning on the way to the airport, which I'm not sure exactly what the point of that is, because there are back roads and people can still get to the airport, but the point is they try to block, yes. As Paul did that following morning, actually. So I know this from personal experience, it's a very effective picture, but it's not necessarily a very effective method of protest. Is it really? Okay. In any case, so on the 20th, angry Sunnis were burning tires all over Lebanon, which of course meant that two things. First of all, it meant that it was somewhat hard to drive around, and second of all, it also raised fears that the people that the Sunnis were angry at, who are of course the Shiites, were going to somehow react to this violently and try to unblock the roads and clash, and that Lebanon would descend into more sectarian violence, right? So that's Saturday. On Sunday morning, I wanted to go to the church that I usually go to, and as I was about to leave the house, the phone rang, and the choir director of the church said, "You know what? None of us are going because there were shootouts going on between the neighborhood where you are and the church." So I didn't go. So in the morning, there you have these shootouts going on in the neighborhood right behind mine. And in the afternoon, you had the funeral of General Hassan, which began, as you can see, peacefully enough. So there was about 10,000 people gathered in downtown Beirut, very peacefully, in a dignified kind of way, mourning the death of al-Hassan. But then you would hope that they would mourn and peacefully disperse. But then irresponsible politicians got involved and started calling upon the government, which happens to be right now dominated by a sort of what's thought to be pro-Syrian, and I'll get back to this in a second, government. So the opposition politicians started demanding that the government resign, right? And in response to their demand that the government resign, the youth of the Sunni opposition who were gathered at the funeral decided that it would be a good idea to go and storm the government offices, right? Not realizing that all they had were sticks and maybe metal bars, and the army had, you know, guns and tear gas. So this was the scene in downtown Beirut on Sunday afternoon, which again gave impetus to this idea that that Beirut is, you know, imploding and that Lebanon is about to have a civil war. And as the weekend continued, the instability continued. This was sort of Sunday afternoon. At the neighborhood behind me, you can see the Free Syria flag and an anti-Assad banner in the neighborhood. And there were shootouts between Sunni militants and the army, and here's the army patrolling this neighborhood behind mine. And so, and probably the worst thing that happened that weekend was that in the northern city of Tripoli, which is on the border between Lebanon and Syria, you have clashing neighborhoods of pro-Assad and anti-Assad supporters battling it out in the streets, and you had several casualties, and the army had to go out and calm them down. So here you have some images, an image of the army patrolling the streets of Tripoli. And so, to sum all of this up, for a tense 76 hours, Lebanon appeared to be poised on the edge of an abyss.